The flashlight moved 3 feet to the left, and two people who weren't there a second ago were standing in the dark, watching us eat dinner. These are 3 true boating horror stories, and by the end of this video, you'll never look at open water the same way again. I did not grow up anywhere near skyscrapers or subway lines, but I got something better. A childhood built entirely around water. Fishing docks, quiet coves, engines idling at dawn, that was my whole world. I never owned a boat myself, but my best friend Dane's family did, and Dane's family shared. They kept a mid-sized cabin cruiser tied up behind their house since before I can remember, and once Dane got his license, his dad handed us the keys like it was nothing. We were 15 the summer we found the island. It sat off one of our regular routes, easy to miss unless you knew to look. I guess it was about the footprint of a big box grocery store, no bigger. For years afterward, that island belonged to us. Sometimes a stranger would be out there fishing, but 90% of the time it was empty, and we never understood why. There was no dock, just a thin ribbon of sand hemmed in by cliffs and dense trees. So Dane would drop anchor offshore and we'd swim the last stretch in. It felt like a hassle to everyone we told about it. It never felt like one to us. Across high school and into our 20s, we mapped every square foot of that place. We carved trail markers into bark. We played manhunt there until midnight. Later, it turned into our spot for bonfires and bad decisions. But here's the detail that used to needle me. There was no wildlife. Not one bird, not a nest, no rodents, barely even insects. An island that size should have been crawling with life, and it was silent as a held breath. We used to invent ghost stories about the place just to spook new people, said it was cursed, said things lived in the trees. None of us believed a word of it. Why would we? Until one night a few years back when something happened out there I still can't explain away. By then Dane had his own boat, and one afternoon he floated an idea none of us had ever tried. An overnight camp out. 8 of us total. I said yes, almost before he finished the sentence. Partly because a girl named Ren and I had been circling each other for months, and this felt like the perfect excuse. We left in the early afternoon, hit the beach a little after 4. The first stretch of the evening was perfect. A tour, hot dogs over a fire, a few drinks. Up to a certain point, it might have been the best night we'd ever had there. Then Ren went quiet. Not sulking quiet, unsettled quiet. She kept locking her eyes on the tree line, and when I asked if she was okay, she said she'd been hearing movement in there. I told her it was probably an animal, and she reminded me correctly that in years of coming here, none of us had ever once seen an animal on this island. She said, flatly, whatever's out there isn't an animal. One by one, the rest of the group caught her nerves. Dane's girlfriend Priya asked more than once if we were absolutely sure we were alone. We were sure. No boat anchored anywhere. We'd walked the whole island hours earlier. Dane grabbed a flashlight to prove there was nothing to fear. He swept it across the trees. Ren screamed and pointed before he'd even finished the pass. He brought the beam back, and there they were. 2 figures, motionless at the edge of the trees, staring at our fire. Dane flinched. The light swung away. When he leveled it back a half second later, the figures were gone. Total panic. We'd all seen them, and now there was nothing but bark and leaves. Dane yelled into the dark. A couple of guys ran to confront them. A bad call. Nobody was there. But we could hear faint laughter, drifting deeper into the woods. I told Dane we needed to leave. His pride took the hit, but he agreed. We broke camp fast, killed the fire, and waded back toward the boat. Just before we climbed aboard, Ren shrieked. Both figures were now standing on the open beach, closer than ever. I got on first. As Dane climbed up behind me, a woman's voice called his name from the sand. He froze. She told him she wanted him to come into the trees, that she had something incredible to show him, that she'd come back for the rest of us after. Dane actually started toward her. I grabbed his arm and hauled him back onto the deck. He didn't argue, didn't even seem to register what he'd almost done. We pulled anchor and got out of there. As we pulled away, Ren kept the light on the shore. The man had vanished. The woman watched us go until she finally turned back into the trees. Dane circled the island once, checking for any boat we'd missed. There was none. Whoever they were, they'd already been out there before we arrived. With no vessel, no dock, and a swim that should have been physically impossible. To this day, my mind goes to dark places over it. There's nowhere on that island to hide 2 people. We'd walked every inch of it that same afternoon. Dane and I went back exactly once more, the next morning. A few steps into the trees, propped against a trunk, was a crude human figure built entirely out of sticks. We didn't stay to look for anything else. I still don't know what happened that night. All I know is that island is wrong, and I have zero interest in ever setting foot on it again. There's a second story that's followed me around, and I keep bringing it up hoping someone will finally tell me I'm overreacting. Nobody ever does. This is the kind of story that costs you sleep if you sit with it too long. This happened at a marina I used to keep my boat docked at. I'd owned my boat since I was 19, and that summer I basically lived aboard it. The marina offered short-term, transient slips for boats passing through. One afternoon, an unremarkable boat pulled in beside mine. I stepped out to help him tie off. He snapped that he didn't want help. Fine, plenty of people are private about their boats. Once he'd secured everything, I introduced myself anyway. He looked at me with no expression, said nothing, and disappeared into his cabin, slamming the door. Almost immediately I caught a smell off his boat. Not fish, not body odor, something far worse. I noticed a mug near his wheel with a name on it, Gus. About an hour later I heard a crash from inside, then Gus emerged and walked straight past me toward the showers. That was my first real look at him. Around 6 feet, heavy-set, late 60s, bald except for a white horseshoe of hair, and enormous thick black glasses. He was gone maybe 10 minutes. The whole time I kept hearing more banging from his boat, muffled and irregular, like something was trapped. When he came back, I tried once more, asked if he had a dog aboard. He walked up, leaned down, and said, "There's no dog. It's just me." Then he vanished back inside. The noise stopped for the rest of the evening. I went to bed around 10. At 3 in the morning, I woke to that same sound, except now I heard Gus's voice too, low and aggressive, repeating, "Quiet down." No other voice answered, just that same strained noise, until he barked one final word and everything went still. Nothing else happened until 7 a.m., when Gus left with a duffel bag, heading for the bathrooms. I knew it was reckless, but I climbed onto his boat the second he was out of sight. The smell nearly dropped me. His cabin door had a custom lock. I knocked, called out, and instead of silence, that same muffled sound answered back, louder now, almost pleading. I panicked and ran back to my own boat. I thought about calling the police and didn't. While I sat there second-guessing myself, I glanced up and Gus was standing right outside my window, staring in, silent. He held my gaze, then turned and walked away, untied his lines, and pulled out for good. Something about that man put a feeling in my stomach I'd never felt from another human being. I never saw him again. I still wonder, what if there really was someone trapped on that boat, and I did nothing? The last one happened only a few months ago, and I don't even believe in curses. I'm telling this because I want other people's read on it. My friends Milo and Grant and I took Grant's boat out fishing at dawn. About half an hour out, Milo pointed at the horizon, where a sleek boat sat still on the water. I don't know boats, but even I could eventually see what Milo had clocked. An orange distress flag off the stern. We'd never normally approach a stranger's boat on open water, but a distress flag changes the math. Grant idled us closer and called out. No response. I told him I was CPR certified, and eventually he let me jump across. On deck, everything looked recently used. Rod set up, 3 mugs still faintly steaming, a jacket tossed over a chair, muddy footprints everywhere. Everything said people recently, except there wasn't a single person in sight. I moved inside, calling out again. Cabinets flung open, belongings scattered. A bed held nothing but a heap of blankets. The bathroom, the last place to check, was empty too. I turned to leave and caught movement out of the corner of my eye. The pile of blankets shifted, and a small, frail, elderly woman sat bolt upright and stared directly at me. She said nothing. She barely seemed to breathe, her eyes fixed on me like she was looking straight through my skull. I told her I was heading back for help and climbed over. While I explained what I'd seen, she appeared in the doorway behind me, walked to the stern, and lowered the distress flag herself. She dropped it under the table and disappeared inside without a word. Grant pushed us back toward cell signal. The dispatcher said someone would check it out, but by the time we circled back, the yacht was simply gone. We never heard back from the police. Since that morning, I've had one piece of bad luck after another, and some of my friends swear the boat cursed me. I don't buy that. But I still don't know what I saw drifting alone on that water, or why she wanted us there at all.